How do you see the innovations that happened in the past decade, the kind of technologies that came out and how it shaped humanity versus the potential that the next decade has? Now we are seeing AI, blockchain, IoT, quantum, all of this coming together.
I think things are speeding up. Change is speeding up because technology is not going away. How people are going to use it is going to change. So I think all these technologies coming together are basically creating new opportunities for the next generation because we may have a challenge to adapt. Do we need people anymore? Will there be jobs that get displaced? Absolutely. Will it help some jobs do even better and more efficient? Absolutely. I think people going to in the future look back at this age and say, how did we do it? And we think we're so cool right now with AI and blockchain and all that. I tell you, in 10 years from now, they're going to look back and say, wow, that's so old.
Do you think that the way that we are absorbing information about technological developments and things like that, do you think that's accelerating now?
With social media, things are going to speed up that much faster. But it's how to sift through, I say, the garbage. You saw with the U.S. Congress, and they were interviewing with Mark Zuckerberg, and they didn't understand themselves.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Quantum Minds podcast. And today we have an amazing guest with us who has had a phenomenal career in consulting, in building companies, advising companies across the globe, who is the partner and managing director leading the Middle East, Africa, and Southeast Asia region for Frost & Sullivan. Please welcome Robin Joffe. Robin, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's our pleasure to have you.
No, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor, and I'm excited to have this discussion with you both and see where we can, move to the next, level with technology, with innovation, and with leadership.
When I introduced you, I don't think I did justice to it, the phenomenal career you have had. So if I can start by requesting you to share more about you, your background, your professional journey, I think that's going to be amazing.
Thank you. And I'm excited. I think I want to just take it back to why I even got excited about technology and why I got excited about global expansion. So growing up as a kid, my father was always involved in, high technology at the time. He was with the first computer and he would take me to meetings with him. He worked at UNIVAC. He worked at always a bit early technologies, from the first fax machine that he was involved in to taking technologies from various countries to other countries to introduce those technologies. So he would bring me along and I was this kid that was at these meetings, listening all the time. And so I got exposure to that. But also we moved around quite a lot. We lived in different countries when I was growing up. And so this was the first thing that kind of got me excited. And so during college, I decided I wanted to go live in China. And it was at the very early stages of China, so you could see the advancements that were coming up. And so, I got that bug. They call that the travel bug and living internationally. And so I've spent my entire career living overseas, living outside the United States, where I'm originally from. And it gave me, gave me the opportunity to see different cultures, different people, different ways of doing business, different levels of adoption of technology. So my career spanned from working at very big tier 1 companies to I was the first employee for a company called Gartner Inc. in Japan. And I actually started the operations there, and we built it to a quite substantial company in Japan. And then I was, I was able to then go and manage all the channels that they had across Asia Pacific and South Asia. And that was phenomenal experience, in my early 30s. And then I left, started my own company, and we would do market access into high technology companies, from security to other types of companies into Japan. And then bitrate compression technology back in the 90s, which was allowing for voice over IP and music, which we see now everywhere on devices, but back then it wasn't possible. To then starting where I'm now, where I'm working at Frost & Sullivan and helping companies to really grow their businesses and identify opportunities.
Wow, very interesting. And one thing that I, really picked my interest while you were explaining the background is your extensive travel journey. You've traveled a lot, and that's something I think while we were coming here, we were discussing. Olivia has also had this experience of traveling a lot of countries, and do you think that shapes your mindset in professional life as well, when you have had so much exposure of different cultures, different countries that you have seen, and you understand what works where, what works not, even if you're traveling for leisure, right? Do you think that really shapes up your mindset to build something professionally later on?
I definitely. I think it does. For me, I still have this excitement, even for places that I visit every single month. I'm always excited to be there. I always have this kind of like, I'm going to learn something new. It's about, I guess, testing your own boundaries, being able to try different foods. It allows in your business career to then not be afraid to do new things. And I think the biggest problem with, with big companies and even small companies is that people get this fear of doing things. So then that shapes them with how they look at business opportunities as well. So if you're able to just get on a plane and go to somewhere new without the fear of what's going to happen. So people will call me up and say, "Oh, I can't believe you're going to this country. Aren't you afraid you're going to get killed?" And for me, it's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. It's very unusual for me to see that because I don't understand that anymore. Because for me, everything is, the world is like, open for everything. And, no place is actually scary for me.
I can definitely relate to that. Like, just, with the travel that I've done, for every single time that I travel to a new country or, do something that's challenging, it's like kind of evidence and proof to myself that like, oh, this actually doesn't have to be a threat. Like, this is actually more of a net gain. So I can relate to what you're saying to some extent.
And then there's one other thing is like, people are like, well, I lived in Japan for a long, long time, over 3 different stints, right? So it wasn't straight through, but it was like 30 years. And people are like, what do you think? And I miss it. I don't misunderstand. I actually miss it. I miss the people that I built as friends and we're still friends. But you have to always look forward, right? You have to, look ahead at the new opportunities. So that's how I take my life. Every opportunity is looking straight ahead at the new opportunity.
Wow. So 2 questions from this, which has been getting me curious. First is this travel experience, and the last thing that you said, that even though you feel attached to the place that you are at that moment, you start liking, like Japan, you took an example, but you learn to let go and move on to the next destination. That's number 1. Does that impact again in taking business decisions? Because in many times when you're launching different products, when you're advising different startups, it's very important to be agile. It's very important to be absolutely focused at the moment on what you're doing, but detach yourself the moment that job is done, right? Many startups we have experienced fail because they become too emotional about that particular moment and that particular time, not being agile. Do you think the travel experience that you have had shapes up those things as well?
I think, yes, I do. I think it's, but it's, by the way, it's not just within startups. It's within big companies. We see big companies fail all the time because they get so fixated on their product and their service that they're not able to open their minds up to say there's another way to do something. And I think this is what a lot of founders of startups have problems. And I've worked at a startup before, and I think that they're not open to external advice. Their external ideas and saying, there's not only one way to do it, there's another way. And you have to look at things from multiple perspectives. That's why I liked consulting for so many years, because we have to help companies open their minds and open their ideas to differences of how they can look and approach challenges that they have.
Yeah.
Not only challenges, but opportunities. Because if you don't take the opportunities in the right way, they don't become opportunities. They become, negatives, or they don't always succeed.
Absolutely. And I can so relate to it. Like 12 years I spent in consulting, then moved on to full-time entrepreneurship. And that global expertise that consulting gives you, married with your passion to build something from scratch, I think that's the best combination, which is quite rare to find. Makes absolute sense. But going back to the point that you were mentioning about the exposure that life has given you because of you being adventurous while at the same time super professional about growing businesses. Do you think, or rather, how do you compare experiences of life that, whether by traveling, whether by meeting interesting people, the experiences that life give you versus the experience you get by working professionally? How does these two differentiate and help shaping up success in the longer run? Is it mutually inclusive, exclusive? Which one would you weigh more to achieve success in the longer run?
I personally, well, I think you probably know this as well, that it's very difficult to separate yourself. I know some people are very good at separating their professional work life with their personal life or their home life, and they're like, "Oh, I'm in my personal time right now, so I don't think about work." But I think I'm always thinking about this, and I don't think it's one or the other, and I don't think one hurts me versus the other. So, even on my weekends, I'm thinking about opportunities, and that's why I like working with startup companies, because it's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You're always thinking about these things. So I think I take that in my personal and my professional life too. So people always say, put the phone down. And I know that's a big thing. Or don't look at your computer, or don't think, why are we talking business? But for me, I don't think it really separates. I don't think there is a separation between the both. I think it's part of life. Work is life. Life is work. And so I'm always thinking about, new ideas, new types of things. And I like to talk to people who think about that.
Yes. And this becomes even more relevant in the current age when we are seeing so much innovation happening, so much disruption happening with emerging technologies coming in. The amount of time and passion and commitment you need to invest in making progress is much more than it was required earlier, because the world is changing at large. And hence, all these things, like I really learned from this experience that you just shared, global experience, understanding different cultures, married with professionalism and understanding of the technology, comes together to shape the future.
Yes. I mean, I'll give you an example. I think, we always have this work from home versus work in an office experience, and also working in one location your whole life, for example. I think you need to have external interactions. For example, I would always recommend, for example, somebody go work for a week somewhere else. And anybody from my company who sees this right now, I say, go work from somewhere else. Wow. Work from home for a week. Go on a holiday. Work remotely. You will come back with a different experience. Wow. You will look at it. You'll look at life. You're doing your job. Even if your job is an internal job, if you never saw anything else, how can you, if you're in HR or if you're somewhere else? And of course, you now we're adopting technologies and things, but you also have to be able to get an experience and be able to look at the people that you work with on a global basis. Technology allows us the boundaries of somebody working in HR in the past was, the HR person would work just in that one office because there was no technology, there was no, the interaction didn't happen. But now somebody sitting in Chennai, for example, or somebody sitting in London who's managing HR across the world, now work with people around the world. And if they've never traveled or they've never had the experience to work from a different location, even within their own city, you get a different perspective. How you look at the world, how you take everybody out for a different kind of food if they've never had it before. You're from Sweden. Maybe people have never had something else from India, for example. Take them out to that restaurant because they may look at the world just even a little bit differently. And I think that's important.
So good.
I hope this answered that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was just, trying to connect this with the global team building philosophy, especially now, like you rightly mentioned, almost all the startups, they are looking to build remote teams. Yes. Even at the company that we are building, we have teams spread across the world. And we have realized that absolutely, and that's what, I had a smile on my face because I could realize it. The way the culture gets built, it's so dynamic. It brings in different flavors. And the output is so much better than you could have achieved in being at one location or forming a team from just one geography. It's so dynamic. It allows you to...
And by the way, that with consultants, you have to bring in teams from multiple locations around the
Exactly.
world, and they have to learn how to
Yeah.
get over the boundaries or the barriers of different cultures and be able to work with somebody. You might have a team with have somebody from Saudi Arabia, somebody from India, somebody from the US, all working on it, and you have to get by that. And if you've never experienced anything, you don't know anything about their culture. You need the ability. It doesn't mean you have to know everything, but you
Yeah.
have to have the mindset or the adventure in your mind to want to learn about something about that other person, which makes that interaction with multiple people that much easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll just give you an example. When I first went to India years ago, the company said, okay, you're going to go there from Monday to Friday. And so many people do this. They travel on a business trip. They go for 2 meetings, for 2 days for meetings. And then they leave and they never saw anything. Oh, I've been to Dubai and I've been to Saudi Arabia. And I said, you really haven't. You arrived at the airport and then you went to your meetings and then you went back to the hotel and then you had room service and then you left. So it's not the experience that you should have. So I always, in my history, not necessarily, I can't do it all the time, but if I can, arrive on a Friday, for example, look around the city, go into a supermarket. You will understand people and look at what technology that people use. See how people sit in a coffee shop. It's very different in one country versus the next. How they're using technology. Make an arrangement with your office that you're going to be talking to. And then ask them, hey, I would like you to spend some time with me because I want to get to know you better.
Wow.
So that is so important. I think that is critical to being able to build the bonds with people. Because, yes, technology is so important. But that human connection is not going away.
Yeah.
Technology is there to enable that and to make
So
things
true.
so much better and so much easier. It's not to replace it. Even
So true.
AI is, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
it's not there to replace us. It's to make life easier for us.
Absolutely. What do you think, Olivia? I think I'm absolutely loving this part. Yeah.
I absolutely love this conversation, and I think you stole the words out of my mouth. The whole element of going somewhere and relating to somebody's culture adds so much value to the types of business conversations you can have, because a lot of the time when you're meeting someone for the first time, you're in a new country, maybe you're meeting a client, or it could be anyone. The first sort of thing to establish is that trust. Actually, emotional trust sometimes even plays a big role in driving business forward. And so being able to understand the culture first, just by spending, like you said, a day or two, kind of just observing and understanding people better will enable you to relate to them on a business level as well, I think. And they will be more, open to all kinds of conversations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I even think about, take the effort. Take the effort, learn something new. You and I think we bonded yesterday.
Big time.
The fact that,
So shocked.
I speak Swedish, not like you speak Swedish, but I speak some
Pretty
Swedish.
good though. Pretty impressive.
And I was able to speak with you, and I think it allowed us to have a quicker interaction and a quicker bonding than we would have normally had we had no history. And even if somebody doesn't speak anything, learn 1 or 2 words. That breaks down the barrier, because that tells the other person, I care and I respect you, and I even went to the effort to learn something about you and your people.
Wow. And this is equally relevant in this current digital age, as we call it, where everything is on your screen, and now thanks to Mark Zuckerberg, on your head as well.
Yes.
Even then, the human connection is the foundation.
Yes. I agree. And, technology is, and I think people forget, and even founders of companies forget, it's about replacing, simplifying, reducing costs, that technology is going to make things better and everything. And people are worried about it's going to disrupt humanity, for an example. Do we need people anymore? I was talking, to somebody and they were saying, it's going to disrupt human beings. If we have AI is going to replace the human being. But I don't think so personally. I think that it's there. Yeah, will there be jobs that get displaced? Absolutely. Will it help some jobs do even better and more efficient? Absolutely. And I think that it's there to enable us to get to the next level, because everybody, in every single technological advancement that's happened in history, I think people at the time were like, oh my gosh, the car is going to disrupt the guy with the horse, and all these things. And people found new opportunities and found new businesses, and people still had jobs. kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about all of the things that's happening with technology.
How do you see the innovations that happened, let's say, in the past decade, the kind of technologies that came out and how it shaped humanity versus the potential that the next decade has in terms of now we are seeing AI, blockchain, IoT, quantum, all of this coming together, right? And whenever I sit down to do my analysis to see how these technologies are going to change the world, I see a stark difference in the acceleration of the impact on the world. What we saw so far versus what we are going to see, let's say, in the coming decade. What do you think about that?
So first of all, I just want to say how technology has changed things. You know, before the mobile phone, that we had a very different kind of society. People reacted to people differently. And of course, now there's a little bit of backlash and people are saying too much technology, but I think it's on a road to how does society adapt to all of these tools, call them tools. So how things have happened, I think things are speeding up. Change is speeding up because technology is not going away. I really believe that. How people are going to use it is going to change. How people, there may be some backlashes here and there and people are going to try to stop it because I think there's a real worry that it's going to change things, but everything in life has changed, you know, and everything in history changes. But, you know, every generation thinks that things are, you know, in the past, you know, it changed the past kind of things. So I think things are speeding up and I think that people have to change and react differently. So I think all these technologies coming together are basically creating new opportunities for the next generation because we may have a challenge to adapt, right? We may have that challenge, but I think what it's doing is setting up for the next generation. Our kids, our grandchildren will be normal for them and they won't even think, they'll think why. And people today say, how did we survive when I was growing up without a mobile phone, without a computer? And I think people are, you know, going to in the future look back at this age and say, how did we do it? And we think we're so cool right now with AI and blockchain and all that. I tell you, in 10 years from now, they're going to look back and say, wow, that's so old.
Yeah.
And I just saw it was very so funny. It showed some kids and they were taking a picture and they were like taking a tour to see ancient history. And it was a payphone.
That's hilarious.
You know, so that's ancient history for kids.
Yeah.
And then they had something, I think it was on Instagram, but it was something that was saying, these are kinds of sounds that kids today don't even know what they are. And it's like a fax machine. Not a fax machine, it's a dial-up internet connection. And, you know, you might not even know what it is. But, you know, like, that's only 20 years ago, I guess. Something like that, less than 20 years ago, there were still dial-up connections to get into the internet. Where now it's not there at all.
Yeah, I remember like my mom when she moved from the US to Sweden and she wanted to like give her mom a phone call or whatever. It was like a really big decision because the cost of actually, you know, being able to make those phone calls across the sea was substantial and completely different to today where you could just like FaceTime or whatever. So yeah.
Same thing in Japan. We had something called callback. I don't know if you had that out anywhere else. You'd call a number, then they'd call you back. And then it would be on some cheap network, and then you'd have to dial in the number that you wanted to call. Wow. That's how you had it. And people had lots of technologies.
Interesting.
So I have a question in regards to all these emerging technologies.
Sure.
I see quite a clear divide depending on who I'm speaking with. If I'm like in a business context, if I'm traveling and I'm speaking with techie people, then these things are kind of becoming normal. You know, blockchain technology is kind of becoming a new industry standard on many levels.
Yes.
There are lots of different use cases, and that's just blockchain. We're speaking about AI that's becoming more and more normalized. But then again, like if I'm walking down the street in Stockholm and I talk to a random person, they may or may not be able to relate to the tech. Do you think that, you know, the way that we are absorbing information about like technological developments and things like that, do you think that's accelerating now in comparison to before? So for example, do you get what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes. Well, I think with social media, I think things are going to speed up that much faster. but it's how to sift through, I say, the garbage. So I think there will be a lot of, I think we can leverage social media and some of these new tools that are out there, some of the new types of applications like TikTok, Instagram. Right now it's about a lot of news and a lot of fake things, but how do we leverage some of these kind of technologies and some of these platforms to be able to educate people more? I think there is a definite divide. I think probably maybe a very small amount of people that really know what's going on. And it's how to get everything mainstream. It's how to get those other people to be making this knowledge about all these options. I call them options. I call them, new technologies that they can use. How do we get them to understand it more? Of course, the younger people understand it much more than the older people. Even, and I say older people could be 35 and above. A lot of them don't know about it as well, unless you're in the industry. If you got average 30-year-old may not know, but the 20-year-old does know it. And the 10-year-old probably knows about it and uses it. They don't know, often they don't know they're using it. It's in products that they don't realize, I didn't realize that. I've been using it for 10 years now, whatever number of years.
Right. But even if you see, in technological disruptions, there are two kinds. Number one is, an innovation that slides through and you don't realize it.
Yes.
Now, for example, AI is one of that. From a consumer standpoint, you suddenly realize your experience in shopping, your experience in getting answers from online has become seamless. You didn't realize it, but the builder, let's say OpenAI who started it or any other, they realize the plunge of it, right?
Yes.
So taking that example, if we break apart the participants in digital innovation, you have the builders, or let's say the startups or the corporates who are building in it. You have the users, ultimate consumers. You have the investors who invest money, and the government who kind of support through regulations. Now, across the globe, depending on the geography you're in, these operate absolutely differently, depending on the technology that comes in. Now, we spoke about the easy to go disruptions, like, for example, AI from a consumer standpoint. Now, from a builder standpoint as well, because the consumers have started accepting it much easily, investment has started flowing in, and the government has also become supportive. What about the other technologies like blockchain, like quantum computing, like IoT for that matter, or anything else which is new right now, which theoretically proves its mettle, but to prove practically, it requires support from investors and the governments. Because once this support comes in, only then the builders are going to be able to make the product so efficiently that the users get the benefit of it. So what's your advice to the young builders, if I may direct this question to be addressed to them? What strategy do they need to adapt to build the products which satisfies these four players and achieve their goal?
I think you need use cases, of course, things that people can see. Because even investors and let's say governments are not going to, of course, you have a few governments, Saudi, UAE, for example, that are putting lots of money behind the new technologies, but the majority are not. Not there yet. They're very slow. They're waiting to see what's going to happen. And I think you need to have some use cases, because even the people in government are also just people, right? People that are investors are not all savvy, and they're still putting their money into traditional investments. So if you want these people to shift and move into more let's say mainstream new tech, mainstream new tech. So I'm talking about all the new technologies that are really cutting edge and everything. And if you want these people to move in, and you want governments to start putting in new regulations and not follow after it's already implemented in some countries, because they lose, they're lagging. Their societies will lag behind everybody else if they're not investing and if they're not implementing. So you want them to do it. So you need to do a lot of advocacy, of course, education. You have to bring these events to them. Right now, it's still concentrated in a couple of these really great countries, like here. I think India as well, Saudi Arabia, US. It's still concentrated in a couple of these countries. To make it all mainstream across the world, you need more of these. You need to advocate to those other countries as well. Make it more mainstream. And I think by doing some use cases where they can easily understand it, otherwise they won't. I mean, you look at some governments and where they're having debates on certain things. You saw with the U.S. Congress, and they were interviewing with Mark Zuckerberg, and they didn't understand themselves. So you need to about the technology. So when they were talking about it, when they were talking about him or about others in technology, they don't really understand themselves. So how can they question or put laws or regulations around those new technologies? Which means if you don't have the regulations and you don't have the right infrastructure in the country, how can investors feel comfortable investing in it?
Yeah.
Even around, let's say, blockchain, for example. Blockchain, is, of course, is not just crypto, of course.
Yeah.
It's all those other applications that are built on top of it. And as you're doing, of course, the security. So people have to feel comfortable. That security layer that's on top of it. That, people have to feel comfortable that if I'm going to be in this technology, it's not going to hurt me. It's going to benefit me.
Yeah. I think it's so fascinating to look at different countries and like what drives innovation in each country, because a lot of the time the incentives look completely different. I mean, in the UAE, for instance, there's this sort of drive to create a strong ecosystem, a global connection point, similar to Singapore, actually. And then you see other countries like the US that have a different perspective. I'm thinking about my own country, Sweden, where people trust the government. They, trust the systems in place. They're skeptical towards, providing something like their own data to a decentralized ledger, and then it's just there. But that's them maybe misunderstanding what the benefits of the usage is. So I think it's really interesting to just kind of compare how different countries are incentivized and are adopting technology thereafter.
And the other thing is, you have to be very careful with your messaging that you're getting out there.
Yeah.
Because, when people get an idea in their mind about something, it's that much harder to get them to change. They're stuck.
Yes.
They get stuck with that first impression.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot more work that has to do, because the perception is people are seeing cyborgs and they think AI is going to take over everything and it's going to take over their life, and it's going to, the movies often send the wrong message about what's potentially going to happen with all these new advancements. And you're going to have people unemployed because of it. And there will be a shift, of course.
Yeah.
But there's also going to be a lot of benefits to society and to our lives, to work, how we do the work. Our work will change.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like, I feel like the human or the manpower could be utilized so much more efficiently with the help of tech. I mean, just looking at industries that, rely on robotics now and automation, that puts humans in a position to, innovate more or be more in a creative state. These sort of autonomous tasks that just require repetitive work, can be replaced. And there's a level of efficiency in that for sure.
Absolutely. And, it can replace some of those jobs, honestly, that are not healthy. Of course, I might get somebody to be upset with me, but there's some jobs and some work that's dangerous. For example, cleaning windows on the outside of a building, mining is something that's so dangerous to your lungs. Maybe autonomous technologies will allow us to do this, and the exploratory type jobs where we don't know what's down there, and we're sending people down there, and then they end up dead. You don't always know about that, so you want to be able to replace things that can be harmful, and encourage things that can be positive. And I think that's what a technology can do. And some of those jobs that are just repetitive, all the time the same thing, is also, I think can be, get people to do more creative things. And I was just thinking about the healthcare industry, for example. People often get illnesses because they don't detect the problems. If you can use AI to, pattern certain things, certain types of diseases or whatever it is, and then be able to identify very fast. It doesn't take you 6 months. Within one day, you go in there, you take a scan, you have somebody doing it, and then they could see some growth or something. And then they, in 1 minute, they've already identified the cure or the treatment so that you can prevent something happening without you even having to walk out of there. And at the end of the thing that, hey, I'm at risk for this, and these are some treatments that I can do, then you can reduce the amount of illnesses that happen and go more. And I think this is what technology is going to do.
Yeah, yeah. So if we have to give an advice to some young builder who's sitting in his bedroom right now and watching you, and he has a vision, he has a dream, he has a passion to build something disruptive. Okay. What is it that you will say the top 5 things that he has to consider, and he or she has to consider and definitely take care of to be out there and achieve his vision?
Okay, 5 things.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to get the 5 things.
Yeah.
I think the first thing is, don't try to make the perfect product.
Okay.
Don't try to do that. Try to keep trying. I mean, well, let me just step back for a second. Try to not make the perfect product, right? So that means make mistakes, because you can't learn if you're not making mistakes.
Yeah.
And this is why you see some countries are very successful with technology innovation. I think India is one of them. I think even it's changing. I think in the past, maybe it was not. You need to be, perfection was Japan is about perfection. I think they're changing because they're actually realizing, but still, in California, I think it is, investors don't want to invest in somebody that hasn't failed. They want to invest in somebody that's failed because these people know what it takes.
They tried.
And they keep trying.
Yeah.
And they keep trying. So
the resilience.
And the resilience is there. I mean, I'm never afraid. When I'm looking at hiring person, I'm kind of like, if you failed at something, that means you know what to look out for. So that's first, or maybe first and second together.
Yes.
Second thing is to expand your horizon. If you talk to people, don't get out of your bedroom. Because you can't innovate if you're sitting there always behind 4 walls, Don't just think it's about coding, because, you have to look at the application, see what's being developed, go to an event, right? Talk to somebody else. You could be the best programmer in the world, but if you don't know about what's happening out in the world, then you might miss something that can actually influence the direction that you're going to. I got 2.
It's legit.
Really important ones.
Yeah, they're
Those
really
are the 2.
important.
Those are my 2.
If we
Maybe also seeking others' opinion.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to take their opinion, but throw it out to a couple of trusted people. Say, and maybe not even show them your application or your idea, but say, how would you reach this, objective, for example?
Yeah.
I want to create something. What would you do to do? People that are in your field, for example, hey, what do you think about, this kind of problem? Here's the problems statement. What would you do to fix it? You get another idea. Oh, wow, I never thought that. I never thought, you could approach it from this perspective.
So would you say that having kind of a detached mentality, like being detached from the outcome or being detached from your own opinions or your own the brain is always trying to draw conclusions and create a safe sense of safety and reality, right? Do you think that, adopting a sort of a detached approach to things could be beneficial when doing this exploration?
I actually 100% agree with that. I think that's another way that you can actually seek others' ideas, others' opinions, and reading a lot, for example, looking at what other way people approach problems, because people always think, oh, this is, I always love it when a new company, a startup says, oh, we've got the best. Well, there's another 10,000 companies out there trying to solve the same problem. What have they done? It doesn't mean that you may have the best idea, but you need to understand what others are doing so that you can also maybe direct yourself in a different direction, and kind of steer yourself in a different direction, because somebody else's ideas and somebody else's approach can often direct you in that to the winning solution.
Yeah.
And also then the other thing is always be innovating. Because you know what? Nothing is stagnant anymore, right? You create something last month, there's something new. Somebody's introduced something new. And you have to be able to be agile to be able to shift very quickly. Because you may think you have, I loved it when I was talking to somebody in Japan and they were talking about their cars and we have the best car in the world. I said, yeah, but it takes you 10 years to develop that new model of car. Oh, but it's okay. But we're this brand. We're the best. We're quality. But you know what? In China, every 6 months, they've got a new model of a new car. And I'm not saying you don't have the best car. You do have maybe you do have the best car. But you have to be considering their development cycle. What are they doing differently? And don't only look at the same industry that you're developing for. You don't learn as much. You probably know the best about your industry than anybody does. But if you look at other adjacent industries or near industries or even very different industries and how they approach problems and solutions and how they develop, you might learn something very different than how you would do if you're just looking at your competitors. Because your competitor today is the guy right there and over there. But your other competitor can be very, very different. And I'll just give you an example. We're talking about battery technology, right? Everybody's talking about batteries because you have, electric vehicles and all of this. And people are like, well, my battery is better than your battery. My electric vehicle is better than your electric vehicle. I'm Toyota. I compete against Nissan and GM and all this. But I say, well, what's the barrier to entry? Now we have countries that are developing EVs. Turkey has a car that they develop. Vietnam has their car. Everybody's developing electric vehicles. China, of course, is one of the leaders in electric vehicles. But what's the barrier to entry for new companies and new entrants to come in? Google came up with their car. Did you ever think Google would be a car manufacturer? Did you ever think that maybe 7-Eleven could be they're not, but who's to say they won't be? And if you think about them, what is the biggest, I would say, value in a car? It's not the box, right? It's not the box that somebody creates. It's the technology that runs the car, right? And so, and maybe even the battery. And, what's the barrier to, people talk about charging infrastructure. And what's the biggest problem? Oh, we can't expand because we don't have a good charging infrastructure. Well, that's if you think about charging infrastructure as being a static, sitting in one thing with charging stations, which you probably have in Sweden all over the place.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
But what about, I said, in Japan, where you don't have small streets, you don't have the ability to do that. What about kind of a long, so they have technology now where it's built into the streets, right? Charging infrastructure built into the streets. So you don't even need a charging station. The car is always charging. Right?
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, legit.
There's an Israeli company that creates that. There's some European companies that are doing it. But I say, what if 7-Eleven decides we're going in Japan, for example? What if we're going to be a new business model? They don't even have to build the technology themselves, but they're going to start a charging station. And I know in India, you had some of these, you drive up, they pull the old battery out, they throw the new battery in. So you don't even have to think about charging your car because let's say 1 kilometer, you have a new one of these, charging stations where they're not charging your battery, but what are you doing? You're renting the battery, right? So what's the most important part of the car now? It's the battery. Or the person or the company that has developed that business model of changing the batteries. It's an idea. And I think there's one of our colleague friends. You talk about India. I'm talking just about technology adoption. Google Pay. Look at that in India, right? And think about this. I'm riding on the street in India, and of course, all our Indian colleagues know about this. But in the West, it's so not there yet. And I wanted to buy a coconut. Coconut water. And I wanted to buy it, but I had no Indian rupees. So what do? I can't buy it, and I don't want to ask my colleague. And then I say, oh, well, let's stop here. He says, don't worry, I'll get it. I said, but we don't have any cash. He says, don't worry, it's Google Pay. She's selling a coconut. I don't even know how much they cost. I forgot. Maybe it's not even $1.
Yeah.
Right? I think it was like 80 rupees.
Yeah. Less than $1.
Less than $1.
Yeah.
The lady selling a bunch of coconuts is taking a new business model, right? Where else? You don't have that in the U.S. You go to a convenience store and it's a credit card. It's the traditional, cash or credit card. And a lot of places they only take cash, right? So this kind of change in the mentality, I'm talking about the people of India is so exciting for me because of the adoption of technology, in China as well.
Yeah.
And I think even when you look at all of these things, that changed things.
Wow. At one point I forgot there were cameras. I was
Yeah.
just so engrossed in
I
this
did too.
discussion.
I did
know,
too.
It's so
I
nice.
love
It's
it.
such a good combo.
Yeah, I can actually sit down here and speak to you all day, and I'm sure that goes the same for you,
Yeah,
Olivia. It is so
100%.
interesting. But in the interest of time, I think we have reached the conclusion of the podcast. Really, really, thank you so much, Robin, for taking out the time and sharing your insights
thank
with
you.
everybody. I'm sure the world at large who's going to watch this episode is going to learn so much from you. We really appreciate your time. Any
Thank
closing
you.
remarks?
I just want to kind of close it with, don't be afraid of technology. It's your friend. It's going to be exciting. It's going to allow you to do new things. Don't be afraid of failure. Because if you're developing technology and you don't fail, you won't find new ways and solutions to do that and see the world.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. That's Quantum Minds for you. See you in the next episode.